We're here tonight to celebrate the communal impact of what so many people in the room have made happen for iMentor this year. Because of you, iMentor is matching 2,400 young people with mentors. Because of you, because of the people in this room, iMentor is celebrating another year of huge innovation in our curricula and technology. Because of the people in this room, iMentor has launched the largest and most comprehensive evaluation ever done on mentoring, ever. A study that will make a huge contribution to the field. Because of you, the iMentor model is now running in nonprofits all across the country, including great new partners we added this year, like KIPP Charter Schools, like City Year, like Miami-Dade Community College, the largest community college in the country. Because of the people in this room, even in a year where many in the philanthropic community have scaled back their supports for nonprofits, iMentor gets to continue to grow and get the program to new students. And most importantly, because of you, we're here tonight to celebrate another year of results. Another year where iMentor students graduate high school and enroll in college at greater rates than their peers. Last year, 83% of our students graduated high school and 74% of those students enrolled in college. Let's get a round of applause for those students. And maybe most interestingly, we're actually here tonight to get the stories underneath those numbers, right? To meet the mentors and the mentees in the program. And this is actually kind of a similar process to what our mentors go through. The more time you spend with these young people, the more convinced you become that 20 years from now, we need Chenille and we need Jerson and we need Alan as the leaders in our community. And if 20 years from now, we want those students as the leaders in our community, we have to answer the question, how do you get from dreaming to doing? How do you make bright aspirations and good intentions at 16 into fulfilling and productive lives at 36? And if you're gonna answer that question, you have to realize that the hard news is there's no shortcuts. There's no super technology, there's no master curricula. You can't Google your way into a successful life. But the good news is we actually know the answer. We know that to create a success story, it takes thousands of little steps and hundreds of missteps. And we know the only way to successfully navigate that journey is to have the right people on that path with you. We know that the short answer is, it's people, right? That's one thing we know. The second thing we know is that these days, that path leads straight through college. If you look and think about everything that we hope for these young people 20 years down the road, a college degree is the single best predictor for every one of those things. Economic security, productivity, health and happiness. Yet, the scope of that challenge is enormous. I think Katie mentioned this in her opening remarks. The New York City school reports came out this week. And what they told us, they were chillingly clear on this issue. Kids who go to school in New York City, 1 out of every 4 graduate school ready for college. 1 in 4. Less than half, less than 50% enroll. And you ask yourself, how could that happen? And here's a little experiment that I think shines some light on it. If all of us just take a minute and imagine our process of applying to college, right? Think about how you did it. And then think about almost everybody who was there to share their college knowledge and perspective with you, and everybody who was there to help you apply, and now take all of those people out of the equation. For 80% of the students in the iMentor program, they will be the first people in their family to go to college. Now you take all those people out of the equation, what do you put in its place? You put in its place 1 college counselor for 500 students. That's the average ratio in the city. To give you a sense of that, there's 350 people in the room tonight. Add another 150 people to the room, and then we all share a college counselor. And think about how that changes the experience, and think about how that changes the odds. Because schools don't have the resources to meet their new mandate, too few kids who could go to college are getting there. And because the support networks that we're building for these kids are not strong enough, too few are succeeding once they get there. Now, in the face of that challenge, we basically have two options. We can either do something about it or not. We can either give up the dream that American public education is the access to opportunity for every kid that wants it, or we can invent a new model for college readiness in our public schools. So let's imagine for a minute what that new model could be. Imagine instead of one college counselor for 500 students, every single student in a school has a college-educated adult solely dedicated to helping them with every step of the college process, to create leverage for that counselor. And what if in this model, you not only had that, but you had individualized support that can map itself to the individualized needs of every student? Because there's a lot of stuff outside of school that comes up and can knock these kids off track. And what if in that new model that we're imagining, I'm telling you that the people who are providing this support are doing it for free? That they consider it not a purely altruistic act, but actually one of the most significant things that they do with their life. Something that gives them real pride and real fulfillment, and part of how they understand what it means to be a New Yorker. That model that we're talking about, that's the iMentor model. We give schools the resources they need to meet their new mandate. We provide the individual support that every student needs to stay on track. And because we're using volunteers and because we're using technology, we can do it in a cost-effective way. Never has that last point been more urgent than right now. For all of us in the room, these are times of extraordinary challenge and extraordinary uncertainty. But here's what I worry about. Too often in times of uncertainty, we shrink from action. Our meta-story breeds malaise. But here's the thing. For the kids that iMentor serves, most especially for the kids that don't have mentors right now, we can't wait. If we want these students to be the leaders in our communities in 20 years, we can't afford to wait for the economy to recover, and we can't afford to wait for education reform to outfit our public schools for the 21st century, because these students are going through the education system that we have today in real time. 1 grade a year, not to be repeated. So that's a challenge, but I would also propose that that is an opportunity. Our opportunity to do something together and not to wait, and to invest in the long term of our city while we deal with our short-term challenges. So that's the ask I want to leave everybody with tonight. I want to ask that everybody in this room works together to grow iMentor. Like so many good things, what happens here in New York City can be an example for the rest of the country. So what does that mean? Next year, iMentor has a goal to go to 3,000 mentor-mentee pairs, provide 3,000 students with mentors. In order to do that, we have to add 2,000 new mentors to our program. What we're asking each person in this room to consider is to simply do one thing. It does not matter what that one thing is. It only matters that you join us. Maybe you want to be a mentor, or maybe you know somebody who could be a great mentor and you want to recruit them. Maybe you want to bring iMentor to your company, or maybe you want to provide funding so we can enroll more students in the program. It doesn't matter what the one thing is. It only matters that we don't wait, and it only matters that you join us. So that's the ask for everybody in the room. Each of you has a pledge card on your table that lays out the ask. 1X on this card and your contact information is all you need to do to solidify your one thing for tonight. If everybody in this room did that, we would crush the goal of 3,000 pairs for next year. We'd come back here 12 months from now and we'd celebrate it together. So I encourage everybody in the room to do that. And while each of us thinks about our one thing, I just want to close with one last story. A story that I think is a really powerful demonstration of two things: the network effect inherent in iMentor's work, and how unexpectedly powerful it is when the thing you're investing in is people. And so this is a story of a mentor-mentee pair who's here tonight: Samir, who's a mentor with us, and John, who's the mentee. Can you guys stand up and get a round of applause for those guys and for letting them use our story? Last year was these guys' first year in the program, which means it cost about $1,000 to support their participation. Almost everybody here in the room tonight has already supported iMentor with $1,000 and oftentimes much, much more. So let's look under the hood of that investment and see what happens, right? First thing that happens is we match Samir with John. This is a great match for two reasons. One, Samir's parents emigrated here from India, and John's parents emigrated from Ecuador. But both of them were born here. So they get to share that really unique experience of bridging not only generations, but also cultures in a single household. But the second reason that John, the mentee, tells me that this is a great match is right away when we match you in the program, we send every student a picture of their mentor. And on day one, all the girls are crowding around John's computer checking out Samir's picture. And they think it's a really terrific picture. And right away, John's stock shoots up in class. And so that's the first thing your $1,000 does, and John thanks you for that. But then the match starts to take off, right? And I asked John to sort of recap the first year for me, and this is how he tells it. He says, well, basically, Samir and I, we made the same mistakes. And Samir tells me about those mistakes in a way that my parents never have. And what Samir did was he used those mistakes to build a case for John to get his act together in school. And importantly, he didn't just tell him that he should do it. He told him how to do it, step by step. And John listened. He stopped being the class clown. He started participating. And expectedly, his grades increased. Later in the year, when John had a conflict with his SAT teacher, instead of giving up and instead of tuning out, he started studying for the SATs with Samir, complimenting Samir's tutoring tactics, I don't know if you know this, Samir, as a cool, relaxing method of SAT prep. And when I ask John at the end of our time talking together, what's the difference between getting advice from your parents, and he's got great parents, and what's the difference between getting advice from your mentor, he thinks a long time before coming up with the answer. And then he just nails it. He says, mentors are more realistic, parents are more idealistic. So that's a great first year of the match. And John and Samir will be together for 2 more years through John's freshman year of college. That is the predictable part. That's what we expect to happen with your $1,000, right? What comes next, I think, is the unpredictable part and really the power of what happens when you invest in people. First of all, Samir gets the iMentor bug. The way he describes it to me is, the feeling of giving back was new to me, and I liked it, and I wanted more of it. So that's pretty straightforward and awesome. And what he does is, within his company, he's doing all these things. He's emailing 20 departments till we get in the newsletter. He's reaching out to the head of the New York market to tell him about iMentor. He cons building, this is a true story, he cons building management into letting him set up a table outside of the cafeteria so he can recruit his coworkers at lunchtime. And then, through all these efforts, he snags 20 additional mentors. So that's the next thing your $1,000 does. But what happens next is even more predictable, which is this experience begins to make Samir interested in what his mom does for a living, which he's never had a substantive conversation with her about. So he travels home to Maryland to have that conversation and learns for the first time what it's like for his mom to work at the World Bank in community-driven development. And she's drawing flow charts and diagrams, and he's fascinated, but she says to him, you know, I can tell you about it, but really you got to see it. And so a couple of months later, Samir's on a plane to Sri Lanka. Once there, and once he's embedded in these rural villages, Samir finds himself really drawn to the young people in the villages, the kids who are just trying to get an education and a good job, right? And amid everything they're trying, what Samir recognizes is that there's one thing missing, and that thing is mentoring. The way he tells it to me, he's literally in the back of a truck driving through these villages, and he's got 3 members of the youth council, and he's got a translator, and he's trying to describe to them what mentoring is. But they don't understand. Mentoring is a completely new concept in these villages, right? They don't even have a word for mentoring in the language. And then Samir says, so then I changed my strategy. And instead of trying to tell them what mentoring is, I just tell them about John. I tell them about who he is and what he wants to do and what the 2 of us do together and why it means so much to me. And right away in the back of the truck, it clicks. Immediately they get it, and they love it. Now, I would argue that this is a network effect that can't be beat. Your $1,000 matches Samir and John, improves John's grades, behavior, discipline, and SAT scores, goes on to recruit 20 more mentors, initiates the first substantive conversation between Samir and his mother about career issues, sends Samir back to the country of his parents' homeland, and introduces the concept of mentoring to a rural village in Sri Lanka. Mentoring, mentor, and mentee are now words added to the local lexicon, and that small village has started a mentoring program. And that's just year 1. That's what we call really good leverage on your philanthropic dollar. And that's what's so beautiful and so powerful when you invest in people. It doesn't matter what you do. It just matters that you join us and that we try to grow this network effect together.